Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and here is yet another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And today I have two special guests, courtesy of Charles F. Rosenay. He always tries to give me interesting guests that I can't always get myself. I have Les Fradkin and Loretta Pieper Fradkin. Sorry, I knew I'd mess that up. How
A
are you to,
mouthful.
how are you two today?
Great, thank you.
All right. So Charles and I go way back, as I quickly mentioned, because of his Good Day Sunshine fanzine. But I guess in a certain way, you and I go way back because I saw Beatlemania way back in 1978. Now,
Oh boy.
I don't know if you went to the location I saw it, and I have interviewed Mitch Weissman before, and he was no longer with the group by the time they got to San Jose, California. So, did you ever perform Beatlemania in San Jose, California?
No.
Okay, so I probably did not see you. I think there was a couple people still from the Broadway New York version that were still part of the touring group, as it were, at the time I saw it. But I'd have to go through my archives to find out exactly who the band members were. But I didn't think it was you.
My
Yeah.
guess probably Joe Pecorino was probably there
Yeah.
because I think he did bus and truck.
Hmm.
The
Okay.
rest of us flew the coop.
Okay. Was it basically you've had enough at that point? I think I asked Mitch the same thing, so he might t say the same thing.
What year was it? I could then answer your question.
1978.
Um, no, we were in Los Angeles and Chicago then. We were playing the Century City Schubert
Hmm.
and the Blackstone in Chicago. So we were on the road introducing the show to these cities. We weren't in New York then.
Okay. All right.
So then you didn't see Joe Pecorino because he was with us in those cities.
Oh, okay.
So you saw somebody else, whoever it
Okay.
was.
Maybe it was all four separate people, but I know it wasn't Mitch because I discussed that with him and I don't remember him being there.
Yeah,
And he kind of became a brief TV star and stuff like that, you know. And so, anyway.
he did Joni and Chachi. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So, um, let me see. So I was not really familiar with your work or anything like that. So I kind of started reading through everything and I go, wow, this guy like knows how to play everything, has produced everything, has worked with major labels and everything like that. So I don't even know where to begin. So maybe you could just start from the beginning and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and just how you got interested in this music thing.
That's a mouthful of a question.
I
Well, my
keep my
mother was a my mom was a concert pianist,
Mhm.
and so she started teaching me keyboards at age 6. But she said I played the piano like a typewriter. So when the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan, I said, "Oh, that looks like a good job." And my father went, "Oh no," because he was in the pants business. He wanted me in the
Oh wow.
pants business, and I said, "No, no, I want to be a guitar player." Now here I am, all of 13 years old, and I'm telling him what I want to
Mm.
be for the rest of my life. What did I know? But by the time I was 18, we had been traveling to Europe quite a lot, and I had already seen all the sights with them. And I said to him, "I've seen the Tower of London, I've seen Buckingham Palace. I'm going to Apple."
Mm.
He said, "Well, come back for dinner." I said, "Maybe I will, maybe I won't." So I walked into Apple, and Derek Taylor was at the top. I walked in as a DJ from college, and I
Mhm.
was just looking to get some albums to play on the station. And Derek Taylor happened to be at the top of the stairs with his office open, and he asked me who I was, and I told him who I was, and he said, "Do you play instruments?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Can you arrange strings?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm a music major. I'm studying Baroque music. I
Mhm.
have a degree in Baroque music." He said, "Do I have a job for you?" And so I said, "What might that be?" He said, "Well, do you know how to play a mellotron?"
Mhm.
Now, I just took Al Cooper's advice, who told me, "Lie, make it up." I said, "Sure, I do." So
Mhm.
I'd never touched one. Of course, I knew what it was, but I'd never played one.
Mhm.
And they gave me the assignment of arranging the strings and brass for Golden Slumbers Carry That Weight. That was my first job at Apple.
Mhm.
So I sat there and I did that. And I started doing other sessions at Apple. And then when I got back from college that year, John Hammond signed me to Columbia Records. He sort of unofficially discovered me. Said I sounded like a young Bobby. I said, Bobby who? He meant Dylan.
Yeah.
And he loved my songwriting. He said, I don't understand what you're writing about, but it sounds important. Then he called my parents up and he said, look, he's got to finish school. I have a production job for him here at CBS if he wants it when he's done. But I ended up moving over to MGM and I signed with them. And I was the first recording artist on Sunflower Records. And then after that deal didn't sort itself out quite the way. I mean, I did have a top hit there, but I wasn't getting paid. That was the beginning of my education of not getting paid in the music business. And so I left. I left there, and after I finished school, I was looking for a record deal, and I went to Alan Klein, who was my neighbor in Riverdale, where I was raised and grew up. And I said, Alan, where's the money in this business? He said, if you want to know where the money is, go talk to Morris Levy, which I went and did. And Morris looked at me with that gravelly voice of his and said, the money's in publishing copyrights. I said, are you going to help me get some? He said, yes, one day you'll do a record for me. I said, no, I don't think so, Morris. Little did I know that he had his fingers in so many labels that a lot of the things I did after that, I was doing records for Morris. I just
Wow.
didn't know it. So I signed up with Laurie Records, who had Dion and the Belmonts and during the Pacemakers, and they signed me up as a producer, not only to produce records by California, which we are, but other artists as well. And right before that, I had been working with the Left Bank, who were old friends of mine. And I had the brainy idea, I was younger than they were, but I had the idea that I could give them a revitalized career. And I approached Bell Records, who I was friendly with, and I said, I think I can get the Left Bank to record for you. And they gave me a budget to work with them. And one of the songs we did was I Could Make It Last Forever, which you hear on our new album, Postcard from London. That record is attacked exactly the way it was done, except we added Loretta to it because it needed a woman. So, and but that deal collapsed because the guys were not the most reliable people in the world. I mean, they've all passed on now, so it's not really fair of me to be too critical of them. But let's just say they enjoyed their liquor a lot more than they enjoyed singing. And so that deal didn't work out. And I said to them, look, I have this deal that I could get with Laurie Records. And Mike Brown said to me, well, I worked with Laurie with Montage. They're okay. Sign with them. So I did. And I brought them in to be the rest of the group. And so we cut a couple of sides for them. And then the guys wandered off into La La Land. I'm not quite sure why, but I ended up replacing members as the years went on, but kept the name and kept the group going through all the years. We did 22 sides for Laurie, which I produced. And in 2023, I needed to protect the trademark. So I said to Loretta, look, there's always been a woman in the band. Would you mind being the woman in the band? And you said, okay.
Yes.
And it gave us a very different and unusual sound because Loretta's a trained church choir singer. She doesn't sing like a rock singer. And I don't exactly sing like Steve Perry either. So it gave us a classical influenced pop sound, and that's how we sound now. So
Okay. I guess I'll ask Loretta a question, so she's kind of included in all this. So, what's your background, and how did you get connected with Les?
That's a story. I was in real estate for almost 40 years, a
Wow.
long time. And I did sales, property management, you name it, I did it. And I got involved with a group in Colorado, and we had at the Broadmoor a big convention for about 3-4 states would come in and have a big convention for a week. And they said, Loretta, we want the Beatles for entertainment. And I said, you're not going to get the Beatles. And they said, you call around and you get the best you can find. So I called state to state to state. Finally, I got a call back from his manager. And he said, number one, when do you need them? How are
Mhm.
you going to pay them?
How much?
And how much?
Yeah.
When?
How long? And they said, okay. And so he came to the Broadmoor. He played for the convention. It was fabulous. And I was kind of in charge of it. And I just couldn't believe he kept playing and playing. And the time was up. And the realtors would always say, here's another $100. Play this song, play that song. And they went on and on.
At that point, we were doing these encores for them at $100 an encore, and
Hmm.
all the songs they kept asking for were all the stuff from Hamburg, all the rock and roll songs.
Mm.
And after about 12 of those, I just looked at the guys and said, "My hand hurts. I got to stop." So,
Yes. So anyway, that's how we met. And we connected and was married a year later at the Broadmoor.
Hmm. Very cool.
Yeah, that's
And so, California is just kind of well, originally it sounded like it was a not legit is that's not the word, but a proper group, and then now it's kind of like just your group name for you two, basically.
yes, it started out as an actual band
Hmm.
who did actual gigs, opening
Yeah.
up for Dion and other people.
Excuse me.
But as the years went by, the guys at the label said, Les, we really don't want you on the road.
Hmm.
Um, we need you in the studio. But the Summer Fun medley that we had in 1981, the Beach Boys medley, was such a popular record that
Hmm.
they did send us out on tour. We opened up for the Turtles at my father's place in Long Island. Not
Hmm.
my father, but the name of the place.
Hmm.
And we opened up for the Trogs and Utopia, Todd Rundgren.
Oh wow.
We did some shows with them. So,
yeah. And then it just
and then as the years went by, I said, "This is getting ridiculous." See, I had done so many shows with Beatlemania that by the time I got out of Beatlemania, I've given it the office. I'd done over 1,000 performances.
Hmm.
So I didn't really want to go on the road anymore. So we just kept making records.
Hmm.
And that's what we do now, where our live stage is basically YouTube.
I see. And your label nowadays is RRO Entertainment. Is that correct? Is that how that works? Or
It's been that way since 2003, yes.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Stands for the Reality Rock Organization.
okay. And what type of other music besides California do you produce, if you do?
Well, we have been doing an enormous amount of my own solo releases, which Loretta
Okay,
has been on and has co-produced.
okay.
But for a long time, she said, "I don't want any real credit. I'm just trying to help you get where you're trying to go." I
Hmm.
said, "This is ridiculous. You have to be recognized for what you're doing." But we've also had a 4-volume compilation of Birds, tribute music to the Birds that had Bill Lloyd, the Kennedys, Walter Egan. We had an album out by Firefall of Beatles songs. They did acoustically. We did what else have we done? We've done some surf music from a number of projects.
Hmm.
We've done a single of Napoleon's Ghosts Are Coming to Take Me Away. That did over 500,000.
Wow.
Loretta was the one who said, "That's not going to sell." That's the only mistake she's ever made.
it sold.
And,
I think Warner Brothers said that originally. That's not going to sell. And
yeah, the other day they kept trying to claim that our master was theirs, and I said, "No, no, it's not yours, it's ours." So yeah, we've had a number of things like that. We had a group, Venus and Blue Jeans, which we signed the girls when they were 16 years old. They were all local to us in Colorado.
hmm.
One of whom was Mackenzie Meehan, who was a TV star on Bull.
Mm.
She's on that show.
Mm.
She wasn't then, but she has been since.
Right.
So they did a couple of albums. We did an album with our niece Amber Gomez, which was kind of like a trance dance kind of music album, which she wanted to do. But the main stuff that has proven the sales force of the label is the stuff we've done together
Hmm.
and some of the singles I put out before we were doing things together.
Hmm.
The label has already had over 4 million
Mm. Okay.
streams and
Now
downloads, so we've done okay.
one group I read, and I actually have at least one of their albums because I like them, and that you're affiliated with is Edison Lighthouse. Did you discover them, or how did that happen? How did you
Oh
get
no,
connection
no,
with
just a
them?
session musician for the songs.
Oh, I see. I thought it
Um,
was the group
uh,
itself. Okay.
no, no, the group was there was no group called Edison Lighthouse. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
Rick Wakeman played piano on the single "Love Grows."
Hmm.
Clem Catini played drums. It was just a lot of session guys. But
Okay.
when the record hit, the producer, who had five separate groups all under different names with the same lead singer, Tony Burrows, they Top of the Pops called and they wanted the group to appear and they wanted some of the other groups to appear. And so when everybody showed up, the people at Top of the Pops thought, this is a joke, right? You can't all be the same group. No, we are. So
Yeah.
um, and so I we did some touring with
Okay.
the name, which we own.
Okay.
And but it was it became, by the time we did the touring, it wasn't practical for us to have. What we would do is rehearse an entire band of backing people, and
Hmm.
every time Loretta would take their pictures, somebody would quit.
And you start over.
And
That happened several times. It was like, enough is enough. We
and
don't want to do
and
that.
other than the lovely keyboard player we had, Deb Schmidt-Lobis, the other musicians couldn't read music, and so it would take a long time to rehearse them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after a while, it just became, all right, that's enough of this. you know, I did a couple of shows as Edison Lighthouse solo, where I
Okay.
just had, we did one with Sonny Geraci and Pat Upton of Spiral Staircase and
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Valley. That was over at the Arcadia in Illinois. Um, it became more practical to do that. And then it became even impractical to do that because as the airlines started tightening up, well, they would tighten up how much equipment you could bring.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest problem we had was how do I replicate 20, 30 years of music with one guitar and one pedal? You
Right.
couldn't do it. It just became impossible to do that
Interesting.
and give the audience
What they want.
because what they really wanted was to see the guitars. They didn't really know what the sound was. They just
Right.
wanted to see all the guitars. So
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's not a unique story. I think Ron Dante had a similar story when I interviewed him that he was part of so many groups and he'd have to go out as different groups, not as himself and things like that in the past. So, you know,
we
music
did a show
business
with
is
him in Long
fascinating.
Island. We did a show with Ron. He
Hmm.
didn't bring his own Stratocaster. He wanted to borrow mine.
Hmm.
And then he heard me during sound check backing him, and he looks at me and he says, "You're really good. You should be a session musician." I said, "Where have you been?"
Wow. Uh,
I played on a lot of hit records, but I also signed a lot of non-disclosure agreements not to reveal that I played on them.
so,
The thing about the 60s and early 70s is that 90% of the music was done by session musicians
right.
for a number of reasons. Studio time was, for then, relatively expensive.
Hmm.
Very few musicians had the chops that jazz musicians had to play on rock dates or pop dates. I had the chops because I was classically trained.
Hmm.
So I could walk into a room and make up riffs out of nowhere. And until they started requiring sight reading, I was fine. Then it was, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
So, but that's the reason that that happened. And then they'd hire the pretty face guys or women to go out and be the group. This is probably one of the reasons they did so much drugs or drinking because they were faced with having to replicate something they didn't do.
Ah.
That can be pretty scary to walk on stage and, I mean, well,
Tell that story.
yeah, that can be pretty scary to walk on stage and be something you weren't, which
Hmm.
includes Beatlemania. So that happened that way.
Hmm. Now, obviously in LA, there's the infamous Wrecking Crew. Was there an East Coast equivalent that was around that you might have been a part of or were aware of and weren't a part of?
Okay, that's a trick question. I actually have played with the Wrecking Crew several times.
Okay, that's fine.
Uh, one of the
Uh,
one of those times, Carol Kay and I remain dear friends.
Good.
Um, we had a record I had to do, and the client who hired me to produce it wanted to sound like Phil Spector and the Beach Boys. I said, "Well, you got to get Phil's people." So I called up Carol and I said, "Can you book the date?" She said, "Well, let's have Hal Blaine book the date because that's what he does."
Mm,
So Hal and Carol showed up with Don Randy, who of
mm.
course was part of that crew, and Mitch Holder, who is one of our neighbors here now in Colorado, and Eddie Bertrand, who I brought in just so I needed another acoustic guitar to bang away. And we recorded God Bless California ULA, which is under my name, which is out with them on it. We do have a number of other pieces I recorded with them, but they're not out yet. Um,
Mhm.
but in the East Coast, yeah, I was part of that scene as well. And
Okay.
also in London, because Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones formed Led Zeppelin, that opened up some spots
I was
for
wondering about
people.
that too. Yeah, because I've
Yeah,
recently
well,
watched
they had done all the Mickey Mouse stuff and Herman's Hermits and Donovan and whatever, and
right.
that opened up some spots. So
Yeah.
I got in there mostly for Mellotron because once I got the hang of the instrument, I was able to use my Baroque training to arrange Mellotron for dozens and dozens of records, and it
Mm.
was great because I didn't have to carry one anywhere because every studio had one.
Oh.
Not that they all were in working condition, but that was my gig.
Mm. Now, now that leads me to another question: is like, how do you? I've had a friend of mine who had a Mellotron, but he didn't really explain this to me. How does one compose for a Mellotron since it's all those little tape things? How does that work? Or
Well, you
am I
can write out.
overthinking it?
No, 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 no. The, the mellotron is a very temperamental instrument.
Yeah.
It doesn't like temperature changes. It doesn't like voltage changes.
Hmm.
In fact, when I used to take one on the road and the lady next door ran her hair dryer, the pitch would drop. So, as
Wow.
Bob Fripp once said to me, tuning a mellotron doesn't.
Yeah.
I had special tapes made in mine because they were out of tune in the factory, and I said I can't. I have perfect pitch, so I couldn't use the factory tape. I had to conduct sessions in London for tapes that I wanted to use, which
Wow.
were the same strings and choir and flute and whatever, but they were in tune. And then to compose on it, there's a spider technique where because the 8 second limit, you press a chord, lift one finger, and then lift the other finger and move the other finger back into the chord. So it sounds like, and then you overdub it again with different fingers moving at different speeds.
Mm,
And that's how Mike Pinder of the Moody's used to do it. So
mm.
it sounds lush and sustaining because otherwise it's a mess.
Right, right,
It
yeah.
does take a lot of patience to maintain it. I use digital ones now because I got really tired of taking alcohol and a Q-tip on 70 tape heads.
Yeah.
Just too much.
Yeah. I've heard that
So I
before that
now I
they're a
have a
pain in the neck
small
to
one that I
manage. So
use.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it sounds the same. I can't tell the difference. And I've been playing him since 69. So
Oh wow. Okay.
plenty of time.
One thing you said a few minutes ago, you were talking about that you had non-disclosure agreements. Can you reveal t nowadays some of the sessions you played on, or is it still hush hush?
Some rock and roll part two, Love Grows. There's a number of, there was a lot of stuff in the early 70s that I was doing in
Okay.
England.
Hmm.
I played on some things, Mary Hopkin things, Trash. Um,
Okay.
I did various things for Apple also that didn't come out. I did a lot of arranging for their demos to show stuff to
Hmm.
people. And I did a lot of work with Mickey Most
Mm.
because once he heard, that was a great story. He heard about me as a guy who could conjure up mellotron arrangements out of nowhere. And because that saved him a lot of money as a producer, naturally he was interested to hear what I could do. So he hired me, and I walked in the studio at Abbey Road, which is one of the reasons we're back at Abbey Road taking the picture. And I said, "What do you want to hear, Mick?" And he says, "Well, you're the genius, you figure it out." I never asked another producer what they wanted to hear. Taught me a valuable lesson. Shut up and just do it. So
Yeah.
for Beatlemania, I was originally playing some of the Mellotron parts when we were rehearsing, but of course that was impractical for
Mm.
stage. So they hired several different people to do that. But I remember the union coming in very upset that we were using the instrument. And I borrowed a sound effects tape from the Mellotron company. And the guy said, "I want to hear what you're using with this," and I just pressed, "Do it again, do it again." Or audience applause or different things. Oh, this is harmless. He walked out. You got to be prepared for these things. So,
Since you brought up Beatlemania again, so how did you find out about that? I was not really a Beatles fan when all those auditions or anything were going on. I became a Beatle fan uh around 77. So when I saw Beatlemania, I was like, ooh, like all new for me, Um, but you obviously, were aware of it, long before anyone else because did you audition? Did you read a newspaper ad? What was the genesis of it all?
there was an ad in the Village Voice,
Oh, okay.
and excuse me a moment.
That's okay.
It said, "Looking for singers, musicians for unique opportunity." It
Hmm.
did not say Beatles. It just had a picture of the eyes and mop top of McCartney from Hard Day's Night.
Hmm.
Call Mrs. Price at such and such a number. Now, I recognized the number because it happened to be Steve Lieber's phone number.
Yeah.
And how did I know Steve Lieber? Because my mother and his wife were beauty parlor buddies. And I had been trying for years to get Steve Lieber to help my career, but nothing ever happened. so I so Mary Hopkins said to me, "Les, this looks like a good job for you. You should check it out." And I said, "Well, I don't know what it is." She said, "What do you care? Just go in and do it." So I called Mrs. Price, which turned out to be Laura Kaufman, his secretary, and she said, "Bring a guitar and be prepared to try out for the Beatle of your choice." Well, in my case, that had to be George. So I brought my Rickenbacker 12 string and my Vox amp into SIR. And the guy sitting with the clipboard who was auditioning me was Kenny Laguna, who, of course, manages Joan Jett. But at the time, I knew Ken because he was a bubblegum keyboard player, and I knew him from sessions. So I could be conversational and loose with this guy. In other words, I wasn't nervous because I knew Kenny.
Hmm.
He said, "You can plug in over there." He pointed to some crappy amplifier. I said, "You want to hear this right or what?" He said, "Okay, do what you want." So I sang "I Need You" and I sang "You Like Me Too Much" and "Here Comes the Sun." And then I blasted off some 12 string riffs that I knew perfect, "Ticket to Ride," whatever. And he said, "You're hired." I said, "For what?" He said, "Just show up tomorrow ready to sing 'She Loves You.' Never mind what you're hired for."
Wow.
So I showed up the next day and Justin was there. And we were still trying out this was July 76. We were just trying out different people who walked in. Well, Mitch walked in.
Hmm.
Now, it turned out, I subsequently found out that Mitch was a guitar player, but he really wasn't a bass player in the way that I'm
Right.
a bass player.
Right.
He wasn't a session type of guy. I looked at his face. I looked at the music director and I said, "I don't care if he can play at all. Hire this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Look at that face."
Yeah.
So, and then Joe Pecorino showed up and he wanted to be McCartney, but because he was an excellent bass player and a great singer. But they said, "No, maybe you should try out for Lennon because we've got Mitch standing here." So Joe tried out for Lennon, and that was the four of us. And I had to teach the guys how to play "Ticket to Ride" because I wasn't sure. I knew how to play it because I had access to all the Beatles recordings because of my Apple
Right.
experience and my experience at Bell Sound Studios, where the masters for the Red and Blue album were.
Hmm.
And so I knew details about the recordings that the other guys had no clue were even on them,
Right.
such as the bass harmonica on "Hey Jude,"
Right. And of course,
which
there's
was
no
also on "Mr. Kite."
no books back then that listed all that stuff
No, there
like now.
was nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. If I wasn't there, I don't know if they could have learned everything to the detail they did, because you could watch the video and you heard what you heard and thought you heard what you heard.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to teach them that there was a mistake in the bass part in "Ticket to Ride" that we had to recreate. And Mitch said, "Why do we have to make a mistake? I'll look stupid." I said, "If you don't make it, they'll think you're wrong." So that was the beginning of our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And as the months went by, we all brought something to the party as everybody got more accustomed to learning it. But it took us 10 months to get it right.
Wow.
So by the time we walked on that stage, we were one of the best bands in the world. That was my job, quality control,
Hmm.
to make sure they were playing the parts correctly. And why did I know that? Because I had just produced an entire album of Beatles sound-alikes before I walked in the door. So I kind of had it under my hat. And they got quite good at what they were doing, but they had to learn how to do it. And I had to sit and wait for them to catch up.
How was the first show?
The first show, we were we were a little nervous because not Boston. Boston was fine because we walked into the rehearsals and the whole orchestra was there, and it blew our minds because we had never heard it with the orchestra at the same time. All their parts were scored and written out, so that was a trip. But when we walked on stage at the Winter Garden, we had already done Boston for a little while, so we kind of thought, oh, we got this down. In the fifth row was Elizabeth Taylor, Jimmy Page, Jerry Garcia, Keith Richards, Mick Jagger, and Barbra Streisand.
Wow.
Sitting there with their arms like this to impress us.
Yeah, with notepads, and let's see if they'll
We
do
were so nervous we did Help in a minute 20 seconds flat. But it worked out.
Hmm. Now, obviously you
And
weren't doing all 200 plus Beatles songs, but I mean, was there a greater selection that you used? And also, was the show always identical, or did you swap out songs on occasion, stuff like that?
once Jules Fisher froze the show at the 29 songs, that was the end of it.
Okay.
We did 37 in Boston, which included a couple of my vocals, lead vocals, Here Comes the Sun and Something. The problem was it was 2 hours already. There was so much Paul McCartney lead vocal that Mitch was just ripping his vocal cords.
Yeah.
It was not pleasant
Yeah.
to see him have to go through that. Although for him, I guess it was pleasant because he was into it. But it was too long. And
Hmm.
so Jules said, look, we'll just do these 29. We're not going to do any Harrison lead vocals. I
Oh.
asked why. Well, they don't want to license them, whatever. I think they were just shopping for the main two singers, and Ringo had to sing Little Help, and that was the end of it. I
Hmm.
think that was easier to franchise the show without having to worry if the George could sing.
Mm.
Also, they reduced my multi-instrumentalist duties significantly. I was originally going to play sitar as well, which I
Mm.
could. But they said, well, you can't keep it in tune. The lights are too hot. How are we going to get another guy to do what you do? They even reduced the 12 string work to one song if I fell, because they didn't think they could find other people who could do what I did. And in retrospect, they were probably right. I was upset at the time. I was mortified. I said, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to look as good as I can do. And Jules said, look, all you have to do is every time you do a solo, just step forward, look brilliant, and step back.
Hmm.
The rest will take care of itself. He was right, but I was young at the time and I just didn't understand the logic.
Yeah.
I do now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it's the business. Yeah. Now, one thing you were mentioning right at the beginning of it is that it was all kind of hush hush. They didn't tell you exactly what was the reason for the secrecy? Was it because somebody else may steal the idea and do their own cover band and beat you to the punch to the stage, or what was the
No,
worry
there was
there?
a group called Rain out in California doing stuff like that. No, we were being groomed to be doubles for the Beatles, which I was the only one in the cast who knew that
Ah.
because of my relationship with McCartney
Hmm.
and Apple and whatever. Um, they were trying to see if that's why they wouldn't say what our names were
Mm.
in the beginning on the programs. That's why they wouldn't even admit who we were. Eventually, Cashbox and Record World busted us because they knew who I was.
Uh,
So no matter how much Steve Lieber wanted to keep this under wraps, eventually it came out. Not because I said anything, but just because my face was too recognizable to the
okay.
industry.
Okay.
But because when he came down to see who was chosen,
Yeah.
the first look on his face was at me was, "You're here? What are you doing here?" I said, "I could ask you the same question."
Uh-huh.
But that was the purpose of it. They were trying to see if we could be doubles for the Beatles and fool the public. And that's when Mitch tried to play lefty when he first started, but he cramped up and it didn't work out. I just looked at him. I said, "Look, Mitch, just play right-handed.
Yeah.
You'll be better." And
Hmm.
he did,
Yeah.
and he was. So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I was just wondering, because it seems kind of odd that there was a secrecy. Of course, during the same time, they were trying to get the actual Beatles together with those big $50 million deals and stuff like that that never happened. So I guess that was the environment back then. Get the
They didn't
Beatles.
really want to do that. John looked at me one day.
Yeah.
John looked at me back then. We were already fast friends, and I had lunch with him one day on Columbus Avenue. And he looks at me,
Mhm.
and says, "Thank you for doing this. Now we don't have to." I ran into him in front of Serendipity on the East Side,
Mhm.
and he was with Yoko, as he always was.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, "So how's the show going?" And I said, "Great. We're sold out for 6 months." He says, "It's good to have a job." I think he was mocking me from having not worked at Apple for a while.
Right.
Anyway, he said, "So what are you going to do when the bubble bursts?" I said, "Well, John, I'm kind of being typecast as George Harrison." He said, "I know. Once you've been a Beatle, it's hard to get out."
Right.
That I took as a compliment.
Hmm. Now, did you meet all four over
I
time
mean,
or?
I had done a number of things for his company.
Hmm.
I well, of course, I knew Paul anyway,
Right. You said
and
that. Yeah.
and John. I met Ringo with Mitch. Yeah, I met Ringo with Mitch. Did he tell you that story when we
I
met
think so,
Ringo
but you could
at
repeat it.
was it the Whiskey or the Roxy or
Yeah.
somewhere? The one where he says, "I want to go over and say hi to Ringo," and I said, "I don't think you should do that." And he walks over. He says, "Hi, I'm Mitch Weissman." Ringo says, "Well, I know the real one."
Yeah.
We get that a lot. Um, I saw George a lot at Apple because he was in and out of the office trying
Hmm.
to control the Hells Angels from taking over the place. Um, I don't remember formally meeting him, but my diary says I did, so I
Mm.
guess I did.
But that was
I
pre.
kept a very accurate diary during those years, and it says I met him.
Mhm. But that was
That
pre
was what?
Beatlemania. That was pre Beatlemania, right?
Uh,
So you never had a chance to ask
Oh,
George
yes,
yes.
yes.
his
During Beatlemania,
impression,
I
or
don't have any
yeah.
recollection of hanging out with him. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh,
I didn't ask George his impression, but I did ask John. And John said, "You're playing stuff George could never do, or we could never do," because we did Strawberry Fields and a lot of that later music. And I always told the band, I said, "This is doable. If it was played on the record, then it must be playable live,
yeah.
and there must be a way to do it." For example, the sword mandel part on Strawberry Fields, da 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 da. I figured out how to do it on the guitar with harmonics,
Hmm.
so that I was able to play that part live on the stage, but I was playing it on a guitar. We just we would find ways to do things. Um, a lot of it took confidence encouragement, because the Beatles had this reputation of being sacrosanct. They couldn't be duplicated. And my attitude was, of course they can be duplicated. It's a guitar part, it's a bass part. It can be
Yeah.
played,
Yeah.
whoever actually played it.
Yeah.
So, and that's one of the things I kept trying to hammer into the band. This is not impossible. It can be done. And
Yeah.
they said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because I was doing stuff like that before I knew you. It can be done."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, of course, Paul and Ringo going on a tour all these years, they've toured with a lot of the later songs that you supposedly couldn't play on stage in their tours over the years. So it is possible. You're right. So
Well,
uh,
yes, but he has an army of people helping him,
true, true,
as did
true.
we. We had 8 backstage musicians playing orchestra, and the
Yeah.
4 of us out there. And we had to swap things around a little bit. And because Joe and Mitch had to play piano or keyboards quite a lot, as the later songs required. The earlier ones weren't as hard because they were just 2 guitars, bass, and drums. So we managed to sort out how to do those.
Hmm. And then Beatlemania, when the bubble did burst, I mean, was it just a natural, like, oh, we're at the end of the contract, or was there just a definitive this is done, or how did it end?
It didn't end too pleasantly. Bill
Uh,
Sargent bought the rights for the film, which
mm-hmm,
he wanted to do, which I did not want to do.
mm,
I was asked, but I said, this doesn't make any sense. If it's not a live performance, who knows if it's real?
right.
Um, they ran out of money to pay us one day.
Ooh,
And I had promised Steve Lieber, I said, look, as I didn't sign a formal contract. I was just a union member and on the thing as a union member. And I said to him, the day you stop paying me is the day this show stops.
mm,
So one evening in October 79, there was no money. And I said, so what I did is I bribed all the other guys not to go on, $50 a piece. Here's $50. Let's not go on until we get our money.
uh,
And I had Bill Sargent find the money. And he hands me all this cash. I said, what do you want me to do with it? Stick it in my underwear? Well, we went on stage and the show finished. We had run our course at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Even if they'd had the money properly at that point, I think we had about outlived our welcome by
Yeah.
then.
It was a lot of shows
Yeah,
a day.
well, yeah. First of all, we did 8 shows a week, and 3 of them were on Saturday, 2,
Wow.
7, and 10.
Yeah.
I had
And
no
I
idea.
did 767 of them in a row. Oh yeah, it was a lot of work. But you're young,
Yeah,
you got
yeah.
vim and vigor, and you just do what you feel you have to do. But I look back at pictures of me back then, and I thought, boy, I lost a lot of weight, and then by the time the show ended, I was not a well man.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
One of the things you
it's
mentioned
just too
is,
much.
yeah, one of the things you mentioned is you can play the sitar. Um, all the different instruments you can play, uh, did you have any formal training, or are you all self-taught, or how does that work?
I had formal training on piano and harpsichord.
Okay.
I'm self-taught on the guitar.
Hmm.
Um, as far as the sitar was concerned, I had to get some instruction on it because it was just too weird and complicated. I
Yeah.
found a guy who was playing on Central Park West or South. It was South. He was playing sitar in a restaurant. I said, "What did you do before this?" He said, "I was a neurosurgeon, but I got too many headaches, so I'm taking up the sitar." So he taught me what I needed. I said, look, I don't need to know all the exercises. Just teach me how to play Norwegian wood and Within You Without You, which he did. Um, as far as the oud and the bouzouki, which I play on our California records, the bouzouki, I just tune it like a 12-string guitar, one whole step down,
Okay.
which I discovered is what it was. And as far as the oud, I learned the tuning just for the song that I use it on. I
Hmm.
still have the instruments and I like them, but they fit those songs. We were in Istanbul, Turkey, and Izmir, Turkey, and I bought an electric oud.
Hmm.
I like to do that when I'm in different places with Loretta. What's the instrument here, and can I find one? And I'm a bit like Brian Jones in that respect. I just
Uh,
have a knack for figuring them out,
yeah, I was going
and
to
I
ask
figured them
that
out.
about him specifically, because it seemed like he's similar to you, that he would just pick up anything, and suddenly be playing it. And it's like, how does one do that?
I'm blessed with the knack to
Yeah,
do that, as was
yeah.
he. I'm very good at mathematics, and to me, musical instruments are simply mathematics. So once you know the tuning
Hmm.
or a tuning, you just sort it out from
Yeah.
there. I mean, I took guitar craft, and Robert Fripp had a special tuning, and it was insane, but to him, it was great. So, and I know that tuning. I don't use it, but I have tried it, and it's just you learn the tuning for the Zetar, which I play all the time. I make up my own tunings because you can. So
Hmm.
I just tune them the way I want to tune them for whatever I'm using them for.
Okay.
I know that sounds exotic, but that's what it is.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, but my formal training, if you want to call it that, is I took 10 years of piano lessons, but I never had the ability to just switch to instruments. Like, I could do the basic guitar chords, but nothing elaborate. And it's like everything has seemed very difficult to master, whereas it seems like it came easier to you.
It takes time. I'll
Yeah,
give you an example.
yeah.
I was a rhythm guitar player at summer camp. And the guys in my camp group wanted to form a rock band. And because our counselor, Bobby Brandt, whose father owned all the Brandt movie theaters, he had a Fender bass and a Fender Bassman amp. And so he could play the bass, which none of us knew anything about. And so I had my little Swedish Hagstrom electric guitar and my tiny little Fender amp. And I said, can I be the rhythm player in this little thing? And they said, sure. And we played the Rolling Stones' Walking the Dog off the first album
Oh
or
yeah.
something like that. But I wanted to learn lead because my bunkmate, Michael Kogut, could play lead guitar, and I was envious of him. And I said to my mom, when you come up for visiting day, bring me that Yardbirds album that Jeff Beck is on, Having a Rave Up. I want to learn that.
Wow.
A few years ago, I took Loretta to see Jeff Beck here in Colorado at some gigantic auditorium. I said, you've got to hear this guy play. He's unbelievable. He's one of my biggest influences on guitar. She's sitting there and looking at this and listening. And what did you say? You do that.
Yeah,
You can play like that. It didn't amaze her because I had copied him for so long that I guess I must have assimilated some of the stuff
Right.
that he did to such a degree that it that kind of vibrato and whatever. But on the other instruments, I had Baroque music training in college. This is actually a great story. I cannot sight read because of my eyesight. And but I can hear things in my right side that only a blind person can hear. I hear things you don't know are there because of my eyesight. And so I needed to be able to pass my classes, and I could not do it by sight reading the Bach and Vivaldi, but I knew I could do it if I could hear the records. So I called up Jack Holzman, the president of Elektra Records, and I happened to be the music director of the station, WKCO. And I said, look, Jack, I love you. I know I'm not signed to you, but I got a problem here. I got to listen to all these Nonesuch albums, and I don't have them. And the music station will play them if you send them to me, because I need them for my homework. He said, of course, of course. And he started sending me Bach and Vivaldi and Mozart and Beethoven. And I can listen to those records and I can hear every single part on those records without the score. I know what they're
Wow.
doing.
Wow. That's great.
I'm blessed with that. I can, just like a pop record, I can hear good vibrations. I know every single part on it. And so he sent me the records, and that's how I passed my classes, because I
Wow.
could not read the music. I would walk in to my music class and play Brandenburg Number 3 by heart on the guitar in front of the professors. And they went, how are you doing that? I mean, to them, the guitar was a bastard instrument. They didn't recognize it as a legit instrument, but they were flabbergasted that I could do that in front of them. I can still do it. I did a whole album of Baroque music called Escape from Earth where I did that, which had Grammy nominations. But I've just always been able to do that. I still can.
That's very cool.
Very talented.
All right. Well, we have a few minutes left. Let's talk about the current album here, the Postcard from London. I put the cover back there. I assume that's both of you walking on the
Yes,
London
there you
bus.
go.
Yes.
Or in front of a London bus, I guess. Yeah,
We
there
were
we go.
just there.
I was
That
just there in
photograph was taken this
2024, but
season.
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
We
go
took
ahead.
that picture September 27th, 2025.
Oh, okay.
What we did was this. We went on a London classic rock tour, and the guide said, well, you're going to go. This was funny. The guide said, you're going to go and see Jimmy Page's house and where Eric Clapton lived, and we're going to take you to Abbey Road to the crossing, and maybe if you're lucky, you can walk across the road, and we're going to take you to Apple to see the rooftop where the Beatles played their last concert. So I looked at her when he announced this on the bus, and I said, yeah, I was there. And for the rest of the tour, I was the tour.
Yes, the people heard you say that. And they go, what do you mean you were there?
So he held up a picture of the rooftop thing, and he looks at me and he says, where are you in this picture? I said, I'm not in this particular picture because I was in the doorway. And the picture wasn't of the doorway. And but I was there. I saw it happen. And so we wanted to cross Abbey Road. And we learned that if you step down on the curb, the traffic has to stop.
Mm.
It's the law. So Loretta, bless her heart, she stuck her toe off the curb and this bus came to a stop.
Yes.
Ah, okay. So let's look at
Yes.
that again.
Now, yeah.
Yes.
Now, okay, you can come back in the picture. Now
No,
that they've seen
show
the
picture.
yeah, the picture. That bus has a number on it, 139.
Yeah.
Now, you'll forgive me if I read through my notes so I don't make mistakes here. When we finished this album, we chose this as the cover, but we were not thinking in terms that the bus meant anything other than it's there. She's walking near in front of it. I'm walking behind her.
It's a picture
we can use.
Yes.
It was ceremoniously to commemorate that I had been at Abbey Road many years ago, playing there on sessions, and we thought, this is great. We'll use that as the cover. Well, as it turns out, there are 22 songs on the album, and 13 plus 9 is 22. But it gets better. Mm-hmm. There are 13 originals on the album and 9 cover songs.
Wow.
There are 22 musician guests on the album, and if you add up all the letters in their names, they add up to either 13 or 9.
Wow, that's strange.
Really?
And ours.
Yeah, and ours. Loretta Pieper is 13 letters. Leslie Fradkin is 13 letters. But it gets even more sick. Michael Brown is 9 letters. Steve Caro is 9 letters. Tommy Finn is 9 letters. George Cameron is 13 letters. Mitch Weissman is 13 letters. Justin Neal is 13 letters.
Everybody you worked with. Yeah.
May I go on? We had no idea this was happening when it happened.
So when did you discover it?
And yet there it is.
When did you discover it?
How did I discover it?
Yeah.
We were mastering the album to get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me like a bolt of lightning out of the blue. Wait a minute, look at that picture. There's 22 songs on this record. We chose 22 because we wanted that many.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
we had that ready.
We had that ready. We didn't know that the picture was what it was.
Yeah.
I told this to Ruth McCartney the other day and it blew her mind. Actually, I told it to Sir Paul too and it blew his mind. Yeah. And so we decided to end the record with The End.
Mm-hmm.
The recording of The End, where I play all the guitar parts, and in fact, the two of the guys who were in Edison Lighthouse with me are backing me on that cut, Joe Rotondo and Dave Stahlheim. They did a great job doing that. In fact, I hired Joe to be Ringo in the first Abbey Road on the River show I did, where I was booked to recreate George Harrison after he had passed. And Loretta said, why don't you recreate the Bangladesh concert? Which is what we did for that concert. Yeah. It was kind of cool.
Great, yes.
Yeah. But as far as the album goes, the I Can Make It Last Forever cut has all the original Left Bank on it, including Michael's father, Harry Lukowski, playing the violin. That was an interesting production challenge because I had to get Michael Brown, who was a genius piano player, not to play like a genius. I said, just play simple. Don't play complicated. He said, but I got to. No, don't play complicated. Let your dad be the lead, which is the first time he had appeared with his father on a record since the first Left Bank album. Well, maybe it was the Stories' first album, 72. Okay. And we have a couple of songs that we wrote with Michael that were the last 2 songs Michael ever co-wrote, which are As Eagles Fly and Jesus Can Save. And Michael isn't playing on those versions, but he is on the instrumental ones that I did with him. But we expanded them with lyrics. We thought they would speak better with words. And then All You Need Is Love has the Beatlemania cast on it.
That's cool.
It's the first recording I ever did with the guys. What it was this. I said, Apple said to me, quality control less, find out if they can cut it before you decide to do this show. I said, what do you want me to do? I can't tell. We're banging away in rehearsal and I can't really tell. He said, just take them in a studio and record a Beatles song and then you'll know. So I said, okay, guys, do you know how to do All You Need Is Love? Let's go in the studio and cut it. And because I had talked to Jim Dixon about that, the Byrds manager, he said, that's how I shock therapied the Byrds into getting better. I recorded them every night and made them hear it. And that's what I did with the guys. I recorded them to make them hear it. And they listened to it and they said, that'll do. I said, yeah, it's acceptable. Let's move forward. That's how that cut got done.
Wow. I have a quick question about the left bank. So I've interviewed Dan Costin. Are you in connection with him in any way, shape, or form? Because
I
I
don't know who that
believe,
is.
oh, okay, because I believe he's trying to secure or has secured the rights to issue some unreleased left bank recordings. So I was just
Some of which
curious.
I own.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys are connection somehow, if you're not, maybe I should put you in connection. But anyway,
Would you? Yeah.
yeah, I can talk to you after the show. But yeah, he produced a brand new Circle album. He apparently is doing a brand new, what's the name of the group? They did Incense and Peppermints, that group.
Strawberry Alarm Clock.
Yeah, Strawberry Alarm
Yeah.
Clock. Yeah, and then I was like, wow, where are you finding these people? I had the surviving circle on one of these podcasts, and they were literally in the circle with every, because now we're just two windows here. It's like every band member was on,
Um,
So
Tom
anyway,
Donovan and I used to do jingles together in New York. One of the guys in the circle,
wow.
Tony. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
They were quite good, actually.
mhm. So they did a
Very
third
talented
album.
guys.
It only
Oh,
took them
wow.
40 years or something like that, 50 years, but they did a
Yeah,
third album.
I have quite a few left bank things that all the guys are on, and
Okay.
the reason they're on them is I was producing them for Bell Records, so we were doing these sides for an album,
Hmm.
and then the album imploded. But I still have the recordings.
I
They're
see.
also on some of the very early Laurie recordings I did.
Okay.
So I guess I'd have to talk to Universal. We have been talking to them. We'll see how
Yeah.
that goes.
Okay.
But
Well, I could
yeah,
put
I've
you
got
guys
them.
in connection and see
That'd
what
be
they think
great.
comes out of it. So, anyway, back to your album here. I've only listened to a couple tracks. One was the title track. I thought that was very birdsy sounding. Postcard from London. It had a very birds
There's
vibe,
no
probably
song on
because
the
of the
album
12
called
string.
Postcard.
Yeah. Yeah, what?
There's no song on the album with that
Oh,
title.
oh, okay. Maybe it was just the first song on the album. It was probably the whole album, but it was labeled what I was playing, Postcard from London. What's the first song on the album?
Yes.
The first one.
Yeah. So you heard either Fellow
Yeah.
Travelers or the second one, Jangleholic, which
Okay.
does sound
Okay.
a lot like the
Okay, it
Birds.
was
Yeah.
that second one. It's the first two songs that I had heard. I didn't
Yeah.
realize I was
This is
listening to the whole
Jangaholic.
album. I thought I was just listening to a song. Okay. Okay.
No.
Well, it was on the Bandcamp thing, so I was like, oh, here, I can
Yeah.
listen to some of it. All right, so there we go.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, but
That was
and I'll go back to listen to the rest of it. But anyway, obviously with your pedigree and background, know the 60s sound and the 60s vibe. Is that kind of like your wheelhouse, that's what you like to make things sound like, or were you trying to do that, or what was your case with this album?
Uh, we we did that song because I wanted to do some kind of autobiographical piece,
Hmm.
and Loretta and I wrote that tune to be both a name check of the influences
Hmm.
and a autobiographical piece. And it ends with the "She Loves You" sixth chord. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but I know how to make a Rickenbacker 12 string or any other model. And now I play Hallmark 12 strings, um, which have been made for me by my dear friend Bob Shade, who runs the company. And I know how to get that sound with compression and EQ and echo and delay. I have to say, Roger McGuinn gave me a bit of a clue with it long ago when I was on a show with him at Islip Speedway in 1974. I'd already met him before when I booked him to come to my college. But he explained how that sound was gotten, and then I developed my own way of playing it. Because I don't play with banjo picks like he does. I just play with a flat pick and fingers. But I still get that kind of sound. And I like doing it. It's good for me to use it because it separates me from a million other guitar players who don't do that. And it's but I can still play six string lead like I do on Fellow Travelers. It's a rock. I played through a Rockman, which
Hmm.
gives it that kind of 80s kind of sound. But I don't play too much six string guitar anymore. I do play a lot of 12 string bass all the time, which is the anchor of all of our recordings is my 12 string bass, which you've heard Cheap Trick use, Tom Peterson.
Oh, okay.
He
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
invented it.
Hmm.
But I use it all the time. And the reason I use it is because it gives our records a layered texture that you would have to overdub much more to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to Phil Spector's records, he's got 6, 7 acoustic guitars and all sorts of stuff
Right.
going on.
Yeah.
And I looked at the frequency spread on a 12-string bass, and I realized as a producer, that's going to solve the problem of not having to play too many parts.
Hmm.
So our records sound big, but
Right.
there's not that much going on them. There's a lot of harmonics going on them, and the 12-string bass creates that. And I'm actually in the 12-string bass Hall of Fame
Hmm.
as one of the Hall of Fame inductees with that. So yeah, they're really interesting instruments. They're a beast to play because they're big and they ring all over the place, but I got used to it.
Mm-hmm.
It does take a different technique to play them from a regular bass, but I like them, especially for us. Us,
cool.
the two of us.
But not to travel with.
I know.
Okay.
I don't think I could get that thing on an airplane. They'd look at me and go, "Stop right there. You're not getting on." So,
Well, what if you needed to play one for one of your live performances? I mean, would you rent an instrument or something, or what would you do?
no, I have used a 12-string bass on our live performance videos. We just filmed them here.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Oh, if I had to play one.
Oh, yeah.
I know where all the guys who own them are. I'd probably
Oh,
borrow
okay.
one.
Yeah, borrow one. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know all the players around the country, and they know
Okay.
me. So
Okay.
we're
Very
a
cool.
club, and you're not in it.
Yeah, well, obviously not. I'd be, well, I'd be in the audience. There we go. Anyway, well, I guess we could kind of wrap it up here. Tell us, a little bit more about how people can get this new album, and also if you're touring around or making any other type of personal
It's on
appearances.
Bandcamp. It's on Amazon. It's on Spotify.
Okay. And
well, we are doing a lot of broadcasts like this with various people. We have a number of films already on YouTube of us performing some of these songs.
Okay.
Perfect World. On that one, I'm playing a 4-string bass. Come Fly to Fall in Love, where I'm playing the oud and the zetar. Willin', where I'm playing the electric bouzouki. And Under the Covers, which is what we call a quad video, 4 screens of me playing all the parts simultaneously. And on that one, I'm playing 12-string bass. And I'm also playing it on a number of my solo things. Everything is Wrong, Reality, Turn to the Movement. I play 12-string bass on those. It's easier for me to sing playing that instrument than it is playing lead guitar, because you got 2 things going on that don't work when you're trying to. That's why you hardly ever see lead guitar players being lead vocalists. But you often see bass players being lead vocalists, particularly in prog rock. And of course, McCartney, who has the top tier of that. But it's easier, just like it is for Sir Paul, it's easier for me to play bass guitar while singing lead than it is to play guitar while singing lead. Because when I play guitar, it's just rhythm, like a folk guy, trying to sing. In Beatlemania, I was just singing background harmonies all the time, so it didn't matter. But to sing lead vocal, well, you look at Mitch. That's what he does. He's a great entertainer, and he plays bass and sings lead, and that's what he does. So now that's what I do.
Sounds good. All right. Well, and let's see. I guess that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think. Do you do any convention appearances or anything like that, or is it mainly?
I'm still waiting for Charles to ask me again.
Yeah,
Charles.
Rosenet. If he asked us to do something, we might consider it. But in order for us to perform what we do, we would have to hire 10 to 20 people and pray that they don't quit in the middle of rehearsals, because the records are so complicated that I would feel sorry for anyone we hired to have to replicate them, because they're based. See, the thing is, my playing, I'm a Baroque classical musician who plays rock. I am not a rock musician who pretends to play classical. There are other people like me. Rick Wakeman is another example, a guy who's a brilliant classical player who plays in rock bands. But when you hear him play, everything he's playing is based on classical theory, like
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I don't play Chuck Berry. I mean,
Right.
I played Roll Over Beethoven for Beatlemania, but what I'm saying is I don't play like a rock musician. I play like a classical player.
Mm,
If you listen to the bass, you should do this the next time you listen to the album.
okay.
Listen to the bass part
Okay.
on Under the Covers. It's a Bach fugue. It's not a rock bass part.
Mm,
You may mistake it for Motown because James Jamerson was a classical
yeah.
musician who played soul and R&B
Hmm.
bass. When you play like that, Brian Wilson had the same theory in Pet Sounds.
Hmm.
He would play the fifth against the one or the fourth against,
Hmm.
he wouldn't play the note you would expect. And that's the way I play bass guitar. It's its own melody underneath the record.
Yeah. No,
And you hear that a lot on our album.
I totally understand what you're talking about because when I was doing my piano years, I had a classical music training, so I still
Yes.
know all that stuff. I got into rock later, or at least at the same
Uh-huh.
time, but I was already into the classical stuff as far as learning the
Oh,
history and how it worked and how music
good.
works and everything like that. And then rock kind of came in, and rock seemed rather simplistic when I first encountered it.
Actually, my music teacher said that the Beatles ruined music because they were too simple. Uh, I disagree, but
Yeah.
I look. I knew all about Bach and Vivaldi before the Beatles even walked on a stage. I
Hmm.
knew all their music. I studied it on piano. My mother taught it to me,
Hmm.
and I understood how all that counterpoint worked. And one of the things that is a feature of our records is Bach counterpoint, where the lines are not always doing chords; they're doing solo lines against each other, and
Hmm.
that's why people who listen to our productions go, "You don't sound like anybody else."
Mhm.
That's true because 99.9% of all rock records don't do that,
Right.
but we do because that's how I think.
Hmm.
And I can't think any other way because I was trained to think that way. So
Right. Hmm. Well, very good.
That's true.
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Les and Loretta, for being my special guests. Check out this new album, Postcard from London, with the album cover behind me with 139. 139 is more accurate than 28F, apparently. So there we go. All right.
there are
Uh,
even more. Yes, it is. Yes,
It's
it
it's
is.
pretty
It's
amazing.
pretty amazing. Yeah. And
and
here's the thing: the
go ahead.
clothes we wore. We didn't even plan what clothes to wear. Not like the Beatles did. Oh, I'm going to wear the white suit or the black suit.
No,
We
we
just
just went
got.
on a
We
tour.
just went on a tour, and it was a 3-hour tour,
Yeah.
and we just looked the way we looked.
Right.
So
You kept your shoes on, I see. Anyway.
Yes, we
yes we
had
did.
shoes on.
Yeah, yes we did. And by the way, there was no way I was taking my shoes off because that concrete is bloody hot.
Oh.
So don't you listen to Paul when he says I just kicked off my slippers. Nonsense.
Uh,
It's hot. It's hot.
all right. I want to thank you too for being my special guest. And that wraps it up
Thank
for
you.
another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And we'll see you next time.